Hello, everyone. This is Ed McGill, co-founder and partner at McGill Junkie Wealth Management, and also host of LED, Leadership with Ed. And today I'm going to be speaking with my good friend, Doug Olson, and we've known each other for, about 35 plus years. So it's going to be an exciting episode in terms of one of the best leaders in the country. But before we do, I just want to thank everyone in this inaugural year that's subscribed on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And you can remember, catch episodes every other Wednesday. They drop first thing in the morning, bright and early. And so today I'd like to welcome Doug Olson to the show. Hey, Doug, how you doing, bud?
Good to see you, Ed.
Okay, good having you. Well, it's been fun because we've known each other for probably about right at that 35-year time period. And recently, you just had a tremendous honor, so I have it in front of me, the Folio Legends Hall of Fame inductee, which I believe is the media Hall of Fame. So congratulations on that. That's a huge award, and your career's not done. We'll be talking about that, but that had to feel good. Maybe we just start off with that, of what that award meant to you and a little bit about your background in media.
Well, it was unexpected for sure, and obviously I've had the great privilege to lead some amazing teams, especially at Meredith Corporation, where I spent the bulk of my career. But we were the world's largest magazine publisher when we acquired the Time Inc. business back in 2017-ish, and was in the right place at the right time, had a great team. We outperformed the industry. Obviously, the media sector is in secular decline, and so you had to really work hard to outperform the industry because there were some headwinds, if you will, against that type of a business. But I'm out of the media business now, as you mentioned. We can talk about it a little bit later, but so never expected to be in the Media Hall of Fame. But they called me up and said that, hey, I thought they were trying to sell me something, honestly. But it's like, no, you've been voted in, and people that work for you loved working for you, and we're glad to have you. So anyway, a great honor, basically a team honor, because it represents what we did as an organization.
No, that's awesome. And you mentioned that Time Inc., where you acquired them. And I remember at the time, you actually led the acquisition and then the merger. And you said it was like a minnow swallowing the whale, because Time was quite a bit bigger than Meredith Corporation, which is based both in Des Moines and New York. But is that an accurate description? I remember that right, that you guys were quite a bit smaller, but then you led that whole process. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. We were the number 4 player in the industry from a size perspective, whether you went by consumers, revenue, any measure, we were number 4, and they were number 1 by any measure. So, but we had great leadership. Steve Lacey was our chairman of the board and president of the organization, CEO. And we had a great team. I was on the acquisition team. There was 5 of us actually, but I did lead the integration efforts. And we had a lot of New Yorkers who said, who are these people from Des Moines, and where are we going to have lunch when we go to Des Moines, and all the things you'd expect. But it worked out great. The first couple of years were tough for us as a smaller organization, and dealing with a lot of challenges, I guess, from a personnel standpoint. But we picked the right people on the right team, and ultimately the business was sold a few years ago for a nice premium.
Well, that's awesome. Let's stay on that whole time frame at Meredith, because media was changing so much in the model. You even mentioned print magazines, which I actually still love, getting my Sports Illustrated and a few other print magazines, but so much stuff is digital. How hard was it to lead in that environment and keep optimism and really the people to see the vision? And then how were you adjusting on the fly, because things were changing so quick in your industry?
Well, we're very fortunate because we, at the peak of our business, we had 42 million subscribers to our magazines.
Did you really?
Yeah, 42 million. So it was a big audience. Obviously, we spent a lot of money and a lot of time and effort digitizing that audience. So we ended up with some very large websites and social media sites, videos, podcasts, all the things that you see out there today. But really, it all started with great brands. We had really good brands, things like People, We had All Recipes, Better Homes and Gardens, Southern Living, In Style. And when you have great brands, you can audiences will follow you to these different platforms. So we leveraged the great brands. We had some really good people that were made the transition from a print world to a digital world. And in the cases where they didn't or where they couldn't, we brought in people from the outside that had expertise in those genres. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of work when we took on the Time Inc. properties, but well worth it. I think everybody got some huge career opportunities out of it.
No, that's awesome. And I think about your leadership style and your career. We met back, I look back at my notes, we met back in 1991 when you were at J&H KVI, Kirk Van Orsdale, totally different type of company than a publicly traded company. And I've always been on this leadership journey, watching people, and it was always intriguing to watch, the young clients I had at the time and where they were able to evolve and grow and do. And tell us a little bit about the leadership at a small, very nimble company that was just trying to attack the world in so many different places. Talk about those days and some of the early leaders that you had.
Yeah, sure. So J&H KBI was a insurance administrator and then became a human resource and benefit outsourcing company. And the beauty about that organization was the owners of the company did not care how old you were, what your background was. All they wanted is top performers. So if you demonstrated that they could give you something and you were accountable and delivered for them, they give you more and lots of opportunities. So I was the vice president at a very young age. Probably shouldn't have been, to be honest. But
and that's rare, though, as you were describing them, because most people wouldn't have released control or even allowed someone that didn't have the seasoning to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, they were results oriented, and they were not Harvard MBA people or anything like that. I did have my MBA from Drake, a school that I know you.
There we go, Bulldogs.
You played a little quarterback at that school, so. But no, it was great. They started out with a team of about 60 people, and something that honestly didn't matter that much, and did a good job there, and worked my way up to chief operating officer, and we went through a sale process there. The owners sold the business to ADP, Automatic Data Processing, the big payroll company. So I stayed there a couple of years until my stay money ran out, and then ran to the media business, which I knew nothing about. So,
but that was an interesting transition, because as I watched you grow up through KVI, I remember talking to our good friend who unfortunately passed away too early, Tom Gessford, and I said, "Why does Doug keep getting promoted? What makes Doug great?" And he said, "Ed, it's interesting. Doug has some unique skills because he understands technology, and some of your schooling was in technology, right at the time frame where technology is really having a bigger, component with the world and companies. But then he also said you could talk, you could communicate between the two." And he goes, "Doug a lot of times sits in the middle between the IT programmers trying to explain what they're doing, and then with leadership and saying why." And am I remembering that correctly? That's what I vividly remember Tom talking about, this unique skill set you had of being able to straddle a number of different worlds. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I was the tech whisperer, I guess. The owners of the company and the senior leadership of the company didn't necessarily understand all these investments that we needed to make as running a big call center and insurance administration and benefits administration organization. And, that was my background. My undergrad was in computer information systems. But I was a programmer for about 2 years and decided really quickly that, hey, I can't do this the rest of my life. I got to get into some kind of management and did that, went back, got my MBA. The company paid for everything. Back then, it was amazing. Not only did they pay tuition, but all books, parking, any expense whatsoever to get my MBA. And of course, I stayed for a couple of years after that. No, Tom was right. I was right place, right time, as I like to tell people. But at the same time, I was a really good observer. I mean, people today call it listening, but I was a good observer. I kind of saw what was going on around the organization, what was important to the ownership team and the leadership team. And what I tried to do is deliver on what they were looking for. And I had I really didn't know what I was doing, but and I stole something from a guy by the name of Bill Koch, one of the Koch brothers. So if you remember, he was really into one of them was into yachting. Bill was, and he had the three T's. And back when everybody was going to seminars all the time about leadership and things like that, somehow I stumbled across his three T's, and they were teamwork, talent, and technology. And his whole premise was, listen, if you have really good talent and really good technology, that's great. But if you don't have good teamwork, it doesn't matter. And so I spent a lot of time on trying to figure out what people liked. How do they like to be treated? What made them tick? How could you get the most out of them? So I had the technology piece. I was developing my own talent because I wasn't that talented when I first started. Maybe some would argue not very talented right now, but the teamwork piece, I think, was the key for me. So yes, I understood the technology, but more importantly, I understand the people that were running the technology.
Think about how, for those of you that are listening, how simple that was. Those three T's that, Doug read a long time ago, it stuck with him. And I just love that comment you made that you were an observer. What do the people that I'm reporting to need from me, or what do they need that's going to allow them to go faster? But then it sounded like, too, the teamwork was looking also to the sides, and down's not the right word, because I've always seen you just operate with your team as peers, but maybe people that report up to you, it was always observing them and saying, how do I get to know them better so that we can create the teamwork? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. And the other thing, I had a mentor in Steve Lacey, who I mentioned earlier, who I actually followed to Meredith. So he and I worked at J&H KVI. He was the president, and he ultimately became the chairman and CEO of Meredith. But I watched what he did. He knew his employees very well. He walked the halls. He talked to people. He knew how old their kids were, if they were going to college, what they were, sports they're in, and he took a personal interest in everybody. And so I did that with my teams. I spent a lot of time, after hours, during the day, over lunch hour and stuff, just talking to people about, and you can tell what made them tick. Some people, hey, we want to have a family and we want to buy a bigger house. So what else can I do in this organization to make more money? Or what's my career path look like? And just those attention to details. Now, obviously, at one time, Meredith became a 3,000 employee organization. You couldn't do that with 3,000 people, but the people that were on my team or they're that next level down, I knew a lot about them and their families.
No, and that's awesome. You've mentioned Steve Lacey a couple times, and couple things there I find interesting is that when you're at J&H KVI, again, something I remember, I listened when you tell me things, but you said, Ed, one of the great things about KVI is we'd throw 10 ideas at the wall, and you really just needed one or two to hit because those 1 and 2 were going to be, monsters. And when you said you were at ADP, and this is nothing against ADP, I just remember you saying, I have to actually file out a report if I want to throw something against the wall. And I have to do a cost analysis of why it was a total entrepreneurial to more rigid type of environment, it sounded like, and maybe didn't fit you. Whereas Steve, even though he went from J&H KVI to Meredith, it sounds like he still had some of that entrepreneurial spirit, and they allowed him to build and run that, and then you followed. Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. I would say J&H KVI was very entrepreneurial, and ADP was very rigid, but they had a model that worked, right?
Yeah, very successful. Exactly.
Yeah, very successful, very profitable. They didn't believe in flexibility. It's like, hey, we have this system, and if you want to do payroll or benefits or HR services, here's how you do them because we've already developed it for you. The company they bought, though, in J&H KVI was very flexible. Hey, whatever you want to do, we'll do. And so that's why after 2 years of like, this is not sustainable because the clients that they acquired through the acquisition just didn't fit into a box. And ADP wanted everyone to fit into a box. But again, two very successful organizations, but very different business models.
That had to be very impactful to just see that. And then tell me other things about Steve. Like, is it safe to say you were, as you went along, because Steve saw all the things you did to make his life better, that you kind of hovered as number two and followed him, and he was an easy person to follow?
Yeah, he was easy to work for because he was very direct and very clear in what his expectations were. And if you did what he asked and you delivered, basically, you got rewarded for it. And if you came up short, he reminded you that this is a business and we need to do better. So, but
No gray areas with Steve. He was
no,
good.
very straightforward. And also, I worked for a guy by the name of Tom Hardy later in my career at
Oh, yep.
Meredith. Same way, just, hey, here's what we're trying to do, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but this is what we're looking for, and gave me a lot of rope, if you will, to go do my own thing, and mostly we delivered. Every once in a while, I got called to the principal's office.
You know what I love too about those early days, and I had told you this, I actually had gotten an appointment with Gary Kirk. I just called him out of the newspaper, and it was at that time when I was starting in the financial services business, and just cold called him. He gave me an appointment. I remember his assistant took me to his office and said he's over there, and the office was so big. I was like, well, where is he? She said, just start walking that way and you'll run into him. And he was very kind. He said, well, what can you do for me? And I'm like, I don't really know. I was trying to process and say something clever. It didn't go well, but he gave me a piece of advice. He said, Ed, I really respect and admire that you're trying to gather clients one at a time. What I learned with the company we started, if we could, write business for the associations and unions and all these different pieces, you can get like thousands of clients at a time. Your way seems a lot harder than the way I'm doing it. It was kind of funny. And he gave me a little smirk and said, yeah, our time's up here today. But I'll just never forget that, how big his office was. But he's very kind to me. And then just saying, I think you're doing this a lot harder than it needs to be, Ed.
Yeah, Gary Kirk and Bill Van Orsdale were way ahead of their time as far as being entrepreneurs. I mean, if they would have been in the tech space, they would own Meta and all the other ones that are out there. Google, they were right place, right time, really good timing on things, and worked very hard, obviously.
Yeah, that's true. Now, while you were at Meredith Corporation, so now we have this huge company, and you got to do some really cool things. So tell us about some of the leadership styles you saw when you were working and helping develop Martha Stewart's. Well, she already had her brand, but some of the things Meredith was doing for her with the magazines, Chip and Joanna Gaines and others. How did you see leadership style differ between all these different
Well, I would say that the common thread with all those people is that, one, they're extremely busy, right? They got their hands in lots of things. And two, they're all perfectionists. They want things to be perfect, whether it's Chip and Joanna and how they film their show, or the magazine that we put out for them, or the website, so that they've got social media and all that. They want it to look perfect. And same with Martha. Obviously, she was way before her time, but then she ends up doing a little time in prison, comes out and is even more popular with everybody because she's got street cred now. But no, they're just they have obviously different personalities, and some are a little more straightforward than others, but they all are perfectionists, and the people that work for them, they've got high standards for. I mean, it's like, this is my brand, and this is what I expect my brand to look like, sound like, act like, pretty much across the board, and they have found people that were able to do that for them.
Did you find too that they truly laid out very clear expectations? And I think that's one of the great traits of a leader, is that the people know what they want. And if you didn't want to deliver that, probably with some of the people you worked, with, that you knew you're going to be on 24/7. Like, the brand is the brand, and the brand never goes to sleep. Did you find that the people that work for them were very energetic, excited? They were working hard, but really bought into the mission of the brand?
Yeah, they completely bought into the brand for sure. And I would say some of them lived the brand, and others were, their special superpower was knowing what wasn't on brand for them.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of people coming at them with lots of different directions to sponsor this, represent this brand, do these other things to make, to uplift other brands. And they always knew what they shouldn't do.
Oh, isn't that great? So they knew when to say no. This I'm not going to devote time to, and let's get back on to what I know is going to work.
Yeah. Like, for example, a wine company offered Martha and us at Meredith a very large advertising program if she would represent the wine, and she tasted it and said, no way. Nope.
So this is not good. I'm not gonna use my name there.
Yeah,
Tell,
not on brand, and I don't care how much you're going to pay me. I will not do it. So
so Doug, you've actually been a great thought leader for me. As you know, McGill Junkie works with a significant number of business owners, and periodically the leaders are calling me about how to handle situations. And so between you and then Chick Herbert, who was on here on the podcast earlier, and you know him as another great leader. But as you were progressing rapidly, I remember calling you about even some of the young, great professionals, you know, here at our firm. And, you know, everyone wants to go faster than maybe they are, or they see themselves, why am I not getting promoted? Why is this not happening? And you gave such great leadership and thoughts, even as it tied to yourself, where you said, I always thought probably sooner than I should have been that I needed, you know, that next step. Talk a little bit about how in your career you handled those expectations either for yourself or now as these young up and coming Dougs coming up say, why aren't I moving faster? I want this role. I want this. Give me this type of thing.
yeah, no, like you said, I always felt like I should have been promoted a year earlier than I was, but no, you just it takes some time. You got to have some patience, right? And you got to behave and do some of the things at that next level, where it's really easy to come in and sit in a meeting and but if you don't participate and you don't offer new ideas and solutions, that's not really what we're looking for in the senior leadership team. We're not looking for people to dominate the conversation, but really at the end of the day, thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead, like, okay, what are the alternatives to what we're talking about here? What are the implications today, a year from now, 5 years from now to the company if we do one of these things? And really playing devil's advocate on some of this, but also having enough grasp of the business that you can, give real world examples. And I always just tell people, listen, you got to be patient. I'll give you feedback every step of the way. I'm not a stamp collector. I don't wait until review time and then spring things on people and say, oh, by the way, Ed, for the last 12 months, you've really been irritating me in the way you're trying to sell things, right? And you're not
you really
following...
sucked in this area. You were horrible here.
Yeah, so I'd like to give constructive feedback and celebrate the wins. Obviously, there's a lot of celebrating going on, and especially the business I'm in right now. We've got a business that's growing, and I know we'll talk about that here later. But no, at the end of the day, it's just being honest with people, but telling them that you may think that you're there, but there's all these other things that you need to do to behave like the position that you want, and so. Look around, see how people are behaving and how they're treating people and why people like working for them, and versus being, the smartest person in the room, and just because of that you should be in charge of the group. Sometimes, look at sports. I know you're a big sports guy. I'm a big sports guy. Usually the best players make terrible coaches.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I agree.
It's usually a role player or someone that wasn't in the spotlight that make the best coaches because they had to study the game, learn the game. They were limited in their skill set. They're not everyone's a Michael Jordan, but like Michael Jordan, I think would be a terrible coach because he was so good and everything came so easy. At least on the surface, it looked like it came easy. Obviously, he worked very hard at it, but. So with leaders, I always look to and say, just because you're the best at what you do doesn't necessarily make you the best at the next level. And, having those discussions are tough. And sometimes you see it. And, I promoted somebody one time in my career that was the informal leader, which they were the person that every single time the group decided to go out to lunch or go have a drink after work, that person decided where they were going and everybody followed them. They weren't the best at what they did. From a work standpoint, they were good, but they weren't the best. I put them in charge, and the team just loved them. And so little things like that. It's not necessarily the most talented or who had got the best grades. Else you and I probably wouldn't have jobs. But anyway, that's kind of how I look at all that. But just being honest with them and showing them, examples of what it looks like of where they want to be. And they very quickly kind of come to the conclusion they still got some more work to do.
It's interesting. You mentioned the sports people. I was actually at an event with the great John Gordon, and there was all these NFL coaches there. And I heard Kevin O'Connell kind of make fun of his NFL career and, being the backup to the backup. And he told this great story. He got in the huddle with I'm pretty sure it was the Patriots, and Randy Moss was in there, and Brady got hurt, someone else got hurt, so he got thrown in there, and then they bring in the play. And if you've ever heard an NFL play call, it's about 30 seconds long, and he tried to get it out, and he said Randy looked at him and said, "Hell no," and just walked out of the huddle and said, "I'm not practicing until Tom gets back." So he told this great humbling story, and Sean McVay was there, and some of his exploits in college, and I know Matt LaFleur, and he talks about having to change colleges and being a backup quarterback. So I think that's well taken. And you said something very impactful to me of when you're talking to young people to say, look, there's other things going on with the company that you're not aware of that we're more focused on right now. The timing will be right. Or I'm not saying that well, but do you remember that conversation?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I actually forgot about that piece. Just their timeline doesn't necessarily line up with the company's timeline, right? In the example that you're talking about, I've had people working for me that they think they're ready, but we're taking the company a different direction, and the skill set that we're going to be looking for might be completely different than what we currently have, and so spending some time with those folks and getting them ready for that next level is vitally important for the next generation of leaders. But now, they got to deal with, AI and all this stuff that's coming at everybody. AI obviously makes things very automated and makes life a little simpler for a lot of people, but you still have to look at it, right? You still have to
decipher and understand what it means.
Especially in the media business, right? Because there's a recency bias and some other things that happens with AI, and you want to make sure that what it's coming up with is something that makes sense and hasn't been, refuted along the way, or bad statistics and things like that. So you still need people editing things. But I have found, like when I work on visions and things like that for the organization, most of us are better editors than we are writers. So if you're a really good writer, that's kind of hard to find in today's world, and they're out there for sure. But most of us, we see something and we can edit it way better than we can write it from scratch. And that's the one beauty of AI, is it gives you something to edit, but you still need to edit it.
That's I love that feedback right there. It's going to give you the baseline, but then it's the master that can come in and edit it and really put it to fruition. And speaking of people that can see the vision or draw from the blank slate, tell us about your new career now, because you've made another total kind of shift where your leadership. This is going to be more about how leadership skills are transferable regardless of the product. So tell us what you're working on now, because it's pretty amazing what's happening.
Well, I'm the co-CEO of a company called Bomb Party, which is a jewelry company based in Alabama that was started by a couple of sisters 8 or 9 years ago with $2,500 is what they put into the business. And very successful business, unbelievable growth, 50% growth the last 2 years. We're looking at 30 or 40% growth again this year. But one of the most interesting leaders that I've ever been associated with is the CEO of the company, my co-CEO and the owner, Lillian.
And she's young.
She's young, mid-30s, and she's very curious. And as a creative, I've never seen anyone that can take something that's very good, and the minute she gets her hands on it, it turns to great. She's very talented, has got a great instinct on lots of things, business issues, product design issues, anything creative. Very, very good. But she and her sister, Bella, who runs the call center and is a big part of the business as far as how things are sold and having interfaces with the sales forces and stuff like that. Just two very, very talented young ladies who... it's a lot of fun, I got to say. I thought I was kind of done after the media space, but I've told a lot of people this. The last 6 months, I've had more fun than any 6-month period in my career, because we're working on a business that's a rocket ship from a growth standpoint. We've got about 100 employees at this point. A lot of them work in the warehouse, about half of them. But we're automating things and innovating things. We're bringing in some fresh talent from the outside. We're moving some people around into jobs that are really impactful, and it's just been a lot of fun working on the business. And so if I'm doing my job right, Lily, it can go do a lot of things on the creative side, and I'm handling the business side. So
I was just say, it's amazing. A couple of things there that you said is one of the most, if not most, creative people in terms of taking something and making it from good to great. With all the people you've been around, what a tremendous compliment to Lily. And I've seen that because I've known her for, 6, 7, 8 years and seen this rocket ship. And for those of you that are listening, I would check out Bomb Party, just BOMBPARTY. It is amazing what these two sisters have built, and it goes back to really your entrepreneur days at KBI, but catching it, real early in that. But I think the other thing too, when I've talked to Lily about you and your style, this is something that everyone can take from. She's a young female entrepreneur. She's going to be on our podcast in November because that is Female Entrepreneur Month, and she's at the top of the list of people that I want on. But she had a lot of people along the way, try to take advantage of her being just a very good person, being young, having this rocket ship that she's been building with her sister and others. But man, she had to learn as she was going along the way. And I remember when I told you about her 4 years ago, you said, Ed, she's just going to have to be really careful about the sharks in the water that are going to try to derail her or take parts of the company or do things. And, it's been this journey of learning. But she also said how many people didn't take her serious. And I think the best compliment that she's given me about you, Doug, is you've had all this success. And one, she was comfortable enough to name you as co-CEO, but she said every step of the way and in front of everyone, you're always elevating her. That she and Bella is driving this with her, but Lily's the primary driving force. And I think that's just interesting. Tell me about that, of being secure in your own self and your leadership skills to say, I'm here to support Lily. I'm here to elevate her. And she's going places that are just going to be unheard of. It's going to be awesome. But talk about that a little bit.
Well, to me, it's the same thing I want from the people that are working for me. Trust and respect. You got to earn it. I knew Lily about the same amount of time you have, I guess, through just checking in every once in a while. And we didn't know each other well, but, talked about business issues that she was facing and things like that. But I have tremendous trust and respect with her. I mean, to your point, you're never going to meet a nicer, finer person in your life. She's just really, really a good, wholesome person. And she's built something that, like I said, from $2,500 to a major size.
Major player, yeah.
And so I just have tremendous respect for what she's done. And the fact that she asks great questions, she's got great instincts. She, trusts my counsel on things. I trust her counsel on things. And it's really been, from my perspective, it couldn't have been a better fit. When I first we talked about the position, I said, well, I only have one thing that I've got a grandson now in Austin, Texas, and I go down there once a month, usually on a Thursday, but I got to keep doing that because that's really, really important. And she's a big family person. She's got a great family herself, and it's just a pleasure to work there, I got to say, and it's in a growing business. So, you have different kind of pains versus a secular declining business, right? Your growing pains when you're growing are, hey, how much risk do we want to take? And can we find enough people to really go where we're going? And so we were very blessed to have some great advisors around us as well that have helped us make some really good decisions, at least up to this point.
So for everyone listening, hopefully you wrote that down where it's a different way than what Doug said earlier. Doug talked about being a great observer, and he said, nowadays they'd call that being a listener. But he said, Lily asks great questions, but ultimately as a business owner, she does have to make decisions, and she's had great instincts. So she's listening, she's taking in information, she's surrounding herself with really, really strong people. She has her sister there with her that, has been a great sounding board, over this same time frame. And so for those of you, on here, think about that. Be a great listener, be a great observer, but ultimately you do have to step up and be a leader and make decisions. And I think that's where we're seeing even more of her growth, Doug, too, because she's seeing how you make decisions. You're quick, you take in information, but you make decisions and you move on. What you say?
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes that can burn you a little bit, but thankfully not very often. Directionally correct, as I like to say in this. But I got to tell you, the one thing, this tariff war that was going on, obviously.
I was going to ask about those, how those affected, because your jewelry's coming from overseas.
Yeah, it definitely impacted us. But the day I was already a big fan of Lily, but the day that I became a super fan is when she got in front of all the employees when all this tariff talk was going on and there's all this uncertainty. And she just basically said, listen, I've got all your backs on this. I am willing to take less money in my business to make sure we keep the momentum going with our consumer and all of you. So do not sweat this. We will get through all this. And it was very impactful. I mean, for someone that doesn't give hour-long speeches for a living, it was a very impactful 4 or 5 minutes that I think resonated with everybody. And, everybody felt like, hey, we're just going to go back and work hard. And, that we're not out of the woods yet, but certainly the stuff coming out of China is better than it was from a percentage of tariff. But no, it's a great business. Tremendous respect for it. It's a unicorn. It is a direct sales business. It is a unicorn, though. It is not a high pressure place. I mean, they want people to be part of the community in this business, and they want people to really want to come to work here. And that's the kind of business she and her sister have built.
Doug, the last question I wanted to end with, because you'd mentioned about previously, not dominating conversations or in meetings. That actually a lot of times isn't the sign of a good leader. And now you just mentioned how, Lily doesn't give really long speeches and talks, but that one that she just gave was very impactful. Was Steve Lacy similar, and others that you saw that they were great leaders day to day, but then when there was an important point to make, that when they did give more of that talk or that speech, it really brought people together because it was infrequent?
Yeah, I would say the biggest trait that a Steve Lacy or now a Lily has, what I try to have is, in those situations when there's something big going on, being the calmest person in the room.
I love that.
Not being stressed out, not being if it's a fire drill and your hair's on fire and you're writing all over the grease board and stuff like that. Very, very calm. That this is what we're facing. This is what we're doing, and here's what I need everyone to do. But really asking questions. I mean, that's from my perspective, some of the best leaders I've worked for, and what I try to do is ask a lot of questions, but not to try to pin somebody down on things, but so we can learn and they can learn critical thinking skills. And I think, Chick and I have talked about that some. He's going to help us with an offsite that we're going to do a retreat here in August. And, I love the fact that he and I are very similar, and we ask a lot of questions. So not only do I observe or listen, but I ask a lot of questions, and it really draws things out of people when you do that. But you got to do it the right way. It can't be like a judgment type question. It needs to be the open-ended, tell me what you think type thing. And then you'd be surprised at all the knowledge you can pull out of people doing that. And Lily definitely has that. She asks really good questions, and they're always the right questions, in my opinion.
Well, and I think that's a great one to end on, where you said be the calmest person in the room, because internally the stomach may be churning, the heart may be racing, but you just can't show that because, people will pick up on that. So that's a great last one to end on. So Doug, always love talking to you, my friend. It's been 30 plus years. We're going to have a lot more together. It's fun to hear that the last 6 months have been as fun as any 6 months you've had. You're a tremendous leader and a great friend of the firm. So love you, buddy. Appreciate you. And thanks for being on here today.
Well, thanks for having me. Always great to see you and your team. You guys are top notch.
Oh, thank you. And that ends it for another episode of Leadership with Ed. And hope everyone has a great rest of the week. And we'll see you in 2 weeks sharp. Have a great day, everyone.